How's it going, everyone? This is a scientific review of Predator Killer of Killers. On top of discussing story and cinematography, we'll also be discussing the scientific elements, scientific accuracy of the film. First, I'll briefly discuss it without spoilers, and then I'll give a spoiler warning and we will go into the details. So let's get into it. The premise of the Predator movies is you have an alien race called the Yacha who travel through space to hunt for sport, and periodically they stop by Earth to hunt Earth's greatest warriors. In this film, which is an animated movie, the Predators stop by Earth at different periods throughout history. The technological development of both the humans and the Yacha appears to be a theme throughout the movie. Compared to the other Predator movies and compared to sci-fi movies in general, I'd say this one is enjoyable. It's not one of the best Predator movies, but it's not bad either. If you're a fan of the Predator films, you'll probably enjoy this one. If you're not familiar with the Predator films, but you enjoy sci-fi movies, martial arts movies, and you don't mind watching an animated film, you'll enjoy this one too. Some parts of it I thought were very well done, and I'll get into that when we discuss details. And the idea I got from this film about technological development of humans and what it says about us as a species, I found quite interesting too. But to discuss that, we have to get into the details. So let's get to that. Spoiler alert. So, the movie starts off in the year 841 AD, and we see this shot of Earth, which is interesting because if you look at the northern part of the planet, you don't really see the ice caps. You don't really see snow or ice. Now, this might be a mistake on the part of the creators of the film, but there might be some intention here as well. See, 841 AD is close to what is called the medieval climate anomaly, or the medieval warm period, which is an unusually warm period of time that lasted a few hundred years. So I'm wondering, the lack of ice here, is it intentional because of the medieval climate anomaly, or is it just by mistake? And keeping in mind that if we look at the northern part where the shadow hits the illuminated part of Earth, well, that's where the battle takes place in the first part of the film, and it is very snowy at the time, which tells us that, well, maybe it is a mistake that there's no snow or ice here. Now, what is interesting, though, is that where we see that line between the light and the darkness through the northern Baltic Sea, that region is exactly where we're about to go and see the battle in the film. So again, it's interesting whether that is intentional as well, this kind of symbolism. Now, throughout the battle, the Yacha, or the Predator, uses a weapon which is a kind of technologically advanced buckler, which sends out a kind of force push shock wave, while the main character of the film, the Viking warrior, uses shields a lot as weapons. So we see the Yacha using a weapon which mimics the weapon used by the human that they're up against, and we actually see that as a theme throughout the entire film. What's interesting is, well, how would such a kind of shock wave emitting buckler work? Well, it's essentially pushing air forward at the enemy, which would result in the person using this technologically advanced buckler being pushed back. And this follows Newton's third law, that a force applied in one direction results in an equal magnitude but opposite direction force. And we see that in the movie when the Predator uses this device on the ice and slides backward on the ice himself. And so that's interesting. I noticed that as a pretty cool little moment there, because without enough friction between his feet and the ground, well, that response force is going to push him back. And of course, he uses it again in the water, which results in him being pushed back onto spikes, and that is how he is defeated. And we notice here that the Yacha isn't very smart, right? He uses this device in the water without thinking that he's going to fly back and hit what's behind him. And that also seems to be a theme in this film, that the Yacha, yeah, they're technologically advanced compared to humans, but they seem to be caught up in the heat of battle and not very clever. And more on that later. We also see that the Viking warrior can hold her breath for a shockingly long period of time. But think of it this way. The Yacha aren't just looking for any warrior to go up against. They gain status in their society by hunting the most difficult prey. So they're not going to look for any humans. They're going to look for humans that have unusually powerful abilities. So it's reasonable that they'll pick a warrior that can do something that seems, impossible or nearly impossible for other humans. So I wouldn't write that off as something that's a scientific error. I think that's very fitting to the theme of the movie. Now, what's interesting is this first part of the film actually has many, many similarities with a classic old foreign film, which had a significant impact on the development of cinema and a significant impact on aspects of many other movies, one of those movies being Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And if you're familiar with the Predator movies, you're probably familiar with that Conan the Barbarian movie as well. And that old classic film I'm talking about is Alexander Nevsky. Now, the parallels between Alexander Nevsky and the first part of Predator Killer of Killers are very, very strong, and I would not be surprised if this film was one of the inspirations for that first part of Predator Killer of Killers. See, in that first part of this Predator movie, we have the Vikings, who are ancestors of the Scandinavians, at war with the Kriviches, who are ancestors of the modern-day Russians, Belarusians, and Ukrainians. Eventually, the main antagonist of the film turns out to be the Predator, Yacha hunter, and he's more technologically advanced than the Viking warrior, than all the Viking warriors, but the leader of the Vikings ends up tricking him by leading him onto the ice, where he ends up breaking through the ice, and that is how he was defeated. In Alexander Nevsky, which follows the events of an actual historical battle called the Battle of the Ice, which took part in the 1200s, you have the Teutonic Knights, who were primarily German, although they had some Scandinavian allies, and they are against the city-state of Novgorod, who are the descendants of the Kriviches, and also ancestors of modern-day Russians, Belarusians, and Ukrainians. The Teutonic Knights are more technologically advanced than the troops of the city-state of Novgorod, but the leader of Novgorod, Alexander Nevsky, tricks them by leading them onto a frozen lake, where, because of the heavier armor of the Teutonic Knights end up breaking through the ice and getting defeated in that manner. So it's pretty much the same story, but the similarities are even stronger when we look at a map. The events of the first part of Predator Killer of Killers are around Lake Ladoga, which is the larger red circle that we see in the corner there. This lake is actually named in the film. Now, the events in the movie of Alexander Nevsky and the historical events that it's based on were at Lake Peipus, which is circled in the smaller red circle in the same corner. It's basically the same region. These two lakes are about a 4-hour drive apart. So very, very strong similarity there, and I thought that was interesting and noteworthy. Now let's get to the second part of the film. We fast forward from the 800s to the 1600s and feudal Japan. Now, in this part of the story, this could be a whole movie on its own, where we have this brotherly rivalry about who's going to be heir to the father's domain. And I mean, without any predator there, that could be a very interesting story. And what's so well done about this part of the film is that with hardly any talking, there's hardly any talking here, everything is understood just from the visuals. The personality of the father, the personalities of the two brothers and how they differ from one another, the status of the family in society, what their family dynamic is, how their status in society affects their family dynamic. It's just incredibly, incredibly well done and shows great talent on those who created this part of the film. Once the predator arrives, we again see the predator using weapons similar to the weapons that the humans are using. We see a spear, we see a harpoon, but a more technologically advanced version of it, as if the predator is intentionally using a similar weapon to his prey, as if to show that they can beat them at their own game. The brotherly rivalry over who's going to be head of the warrior clan seems to follow a similar story to that between the two Sub-Zero brothers in the Mortal Kombat universe. And it's easy to write that off as, well, there's probably a lot of martial arts movies where you have two brothers competing over who's going to be head of the clan, but we do see some other similarities to the Mortal Kombat universe later on in the film, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. Now let's get to the third part of the movie. So we move on to World War II and American pilots. And this is the first Predator movie where we actually see the Predator not as someone hunting on the ground, but someone who's actually a fighter pilot. And he's hunting American fighter pilots here. Now, what's noteworthy is that the weapon he uses is actually a harpoon. He's not shooting at the American fighter pilots, but using either a kind of harpoon on a chain or a net that's fired from his fighter craft. So here we kind of think to ourselves, well, the actual fighting aircraft that he's using is more advanced than that of humans, but the weapon that he's using might actually be less advanced than what humans are using. And when we look at human technological development, well, from the medieval era to the Japanese feudal era, we see not too much technological development. But from the 1600s to the 1900s, which is just 300 years, we see tremendous technological advancement. And even from the 1900s to modern times, we see tremendous technological advancement. And what's suggested here is that human technological advancement, although slow to begin with, actually moves faster than the technological advancement of the Yautja. And when you look at all the other Predator films, well, you see that they're based either in the past or in present day, and they're not based in the future. If human technological advancement actually is at a faster rate than that of the Predators, well, that would make sense, because in the future, when humans can actually fly through space and travel to other planets, we would be so much more advanced than the Predators that it just wouldn't be any competition at all. They would be no match against the humans. So that's an interesting thing that we see here, that even by the time we get to the World War II era, human weapons technology seems to be catching up. Now, what we also see in this air combat is the American pilot also demonstrates some superhuman abilities. He climbs onto the wing of a flying aircraft and seems to hold himself onto that wing with one arm while he tries to deal with the burning engine. Now, for an airplane to fly, it has to be moving very, very fast against the air. That's what gives it that lift force. So we're talking about a very strong wind blowing at this pilot sitting on the wing, holding onto it with one arm. That's a superhuman ability to be able to do that. We also see incredible reaction time when the airplane is flying through the city streets, kind of like the Star Wars Death Star trench scene. So again, this pilot is not a normal person. He seems to have these superhuman abilities, but again, given the theme of the film, it makes sense, because the Yautja aren't just looking for ordinary people to compete against. They're looking for the best of the best. We also see the Yautja demonstrate himself as not being very smart when he shoots down an airplane that's right above him and seems surprised when that airplane falls on top of his craft. Again, it could be that, he would understand that this would happen in a calm situation, but caught in the heat of battle, he just doesn't seem to realize that. Just like the Yautja predator in the first part of the film, using the shockwave device in the water, not realizing it'll push him back onto spikes. So humans, on the other hand, like the main character in, all three of the parts of this film, they're actually more clever in the heat of battle, again, seeing an advantage that humans have over the Yautja. Now, all of the heroes of all three parts of the film end up getting abducted afterwards by the Yautja. And when we see them leaving the home of the American fighter pilot, we see these crop circles where the alien ship was, implying that crop circles are caused by alien ships. Now, the truth is you can actually create crop circles with rope and just wooden planks and some knowledge of mathematics. So you don't need aliens to explain the crop circle phenomena. It could just be pranks done by people who have, some level of mathematical knowledge and ropes and wood. But it was a kind of a cool scene where they say, shout out to crop circles. In this case, crop circles were caused by aliens. Then we go on to the last and fourth part of the film, where the characters find themselves in a sort of arena where they are told by the leader of the Yautja that they have to fight each other to the death, and whoever wins will fight the leader of the Yautja. The arena itself, and this is where we see a lot of Mortal Kombat parallels, the arena itself, the kind of desert or wasteland scenery, the decorations made out of bone, out of skeletons. It's a lot like Shao Kahn's arena in Mortal Kombat. The leader of the Yautja also decorates himself with bones, plus the whole premise of collecting the best warriors from different realms, transporting them to your realm to fight in a tournament, and whoever wins among them ends up fighting the leader of this outer realm, of this other planet, and it's called Outworld in the Mortal Kombat universe. So the parallels here are so strong, I wouldn't be surprised if there was inspiration here as well. Now, here's where something very interesting happens. Each warrior is given the weapon which the Yautja describe as being of their tribe. The Viking warrior gets an axe, the samurai warrior gets a sword, and the American gets a gun. Except the gun is not from the 1900s. The American soldier even describes the gun as being not even from his century, and he has trouble figuring out how to use it. You actually have to put in the gunpowder, you have to kind of get it in there with a brush, you have to drop the bullet in afterwards. So what we see here, first of all, is that the Yautja seem to view the different weapons as not as different levels of technological advancement, but a kind of tribal weapon used because of your culture. So they don't recognize the shocking technological advancement here. And throughout the movie, we see that the Yautja technology doesn't really advance that much throughout all of these different time periods, whereas the humans do advance in technology. They also don't seem to think that the gun is any different from the kind of gun that the American would use in the 1900s. So for them, plus or minus a couple hundred years doesn't really mean anything for technological advancement, whereas for humans, especially when you get to the 1900s, plus or minus a couple hundred years is a huge difference. Again, this implies that the Yautja's rate of technological advancement of weapons is slower than the rate at which humans technologically advance their weapons. Now, consider this. The Yautja are visiting Earth here in the 800s, in the 1600s, in the 1900s. They clearly can fly here pretty easily. Their weapons, at least so far, are more advanced than ours. Yet they never consider colonizing Earth. And throughout the other movies, we never really see them at war. The Yautja don't seem to do warfare. They don't seem to do conquest. They don't seem to do colonization. They just hunt other species one-on-one for sport, and with that, they gain status in their society. But humans do warfare. Humans do conquest, colonization, And the main thing that drives the technological development of human weapons is that it is warfare. And warfare might be the exact reason why human technological advancement, especially in the realm of weaponry, is faster. The rate of it is faster than that of the Yautja. And maybe that's why the Yautja keep coming to Earth, because they see Earth's warriors as being a foe that is worth fighting to prove themselves. And it might seem at first hard to imagine that, well, if they're so technologically advanced at flying through space and at cloaking technology, well, then shouldn't their weapons be advancing at a very fast rate as well? Like, if we fast forward a bit to the point where humans are traveling through space much more easily, and we imagine humans almost catching up to the Yautja's level of technological advancement, but still having primitive space traveling technology compared to the Yautja, does that even make sense? And the answer is yes, it does. Different species, based on their biology, could advance technologically in their abilities at different rates for different types of advancement. For example, it took humans thousands of years of technological advancement to learn how to fly, whereas birds can fly right away. But when it comes to building a structure to live in, well, birds have just been building nests since ever, and humans are much more advanced at building shelters than birds are. So because of our biological differences from the Yautja, it's certainly possible that it's more natural for humans to do warfare, and hence more natural for us to advance our weapons technology at a greater rate than the Yautja. Whereas for the Yautja, it's more natural to advance their space traveling technology, especially if their society, which is linked to their biology probably somehow, their society is based on going far and wide to look for a foe to face in hunting. So what can we conclude from this film? Well, it seems that the humans are more warriors than explorers, although the Yautja have far more advanced spacefaring technology and more advanced hiding technology, which could be, for combat and for exploration. The human rate of technological advancement and the natural human cleverness during battle is greater than that of the Yautja, so that even if the Yautja has more advanced technology, weapons technology so far, the humans still seem to defeat them again and again. And perhaps that is what makes humans a worthy foe for the Yautja hunters. So I hope you enjoyed that, and until next time.